Hey, what's going on guys, XpertFusion here, and today I'm going to bring you guys my ranking of every single Call of Duty from worst to best. This is excluding the first 3 Call of Duties or any of those other games. This is just starting with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and going all the way up to Call of Duty World War II, which is obviously the most current day Call of Duty. It's important to mention that Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare will be combined with Modern Warfare Remastered as kind of one singular title rather than splitting them up in 2 separate categories, so that it makes 11 total Call of Duties that I will be ranking from, in my opinion, the worst to all the way to the best. So what do I think makes a Call of Duty good or bad? In terms of each and every game, there's 3 modes. There's campaign, multiplayer, and then the third mode, which could be zombies, could be extinction, could be spec ops, survival, whatever it may be. Sometimes there's more than just 3 modes, but this is kind of what I, base my carrying off of for each of the Call of Duties. So campaign kind of only affects like 10% of my liking for a game. It's not, that important to me, campaign. In terms of the story, the characters, the setting, everything about the campaign is about 10% of my careness for that specific title. So multiplayer and zombies would kind of go for the other 90%, or obviously multiplayer and whatever other game modes in the game itself. About 45 for zombies, 45 for multiplayer, like I said. And so that's kind of how I'm prefacing my list. So even if a game has a really good campaign, if it does not have a good multiplayer or side mode, it's not going to be that high up because campaign only takes 10% of what I care about in a Call of Duty game. Multiplayer and zombies are a lot more important. That also means campaign might not really affect these lists as substantially as multiplayer or the third mode might. But that's important to mention because there's a lot of Call of Duties that I feel have great campaigns, but I might put them pretty low on the list because campaign's not that important to me. But it's still somewhat of a factor that plays into this ranking. It is important to note that. It's also important to note that I am a Call of Duty veteran. I've been playing since 2005 with Call of Duty 3. Yeah, that's a long-ass time. More than a lot of other people have been. I've been in every single Call of Duty's Prime. I've played throughout the entirety of a Call of Duty's Prime. I played every campaign, played every multiplayer all the way up to using everything in the game. I played every single third game mode. I've seen everything Call of Duty has to offer. So I'm probably one of the best people that knows Call of Duty inside and out, and I'm pretty unbiased because it's not like I'm one of those people who came in midway through and so I didn't experience the older games, so I might not enjoy them as much. No, I see all these games from a non-nostalgic point as well, so I'm not going to be interpreting my feelings or memories towards a certain Call of Duty. If I had any sort of really fond memory of a certain Call of Duty game and that might maybe enjoy it more and have it more favoritism towards it, I'm not going to put that as a factor in this ranking. I'm going basically 100% off of the game itself and how well it played during the time, how well it plays now, because I have played every single Call of Duty in the past 6 months at least, so I do have a pretty good memory on the majority of these Call of Duties to recent dates and how they play and how they feel and everything I'm taking into account, even how well it was supported throughout the life cycle, the DLC, everything. I'm talking everything. And since World War II has just came out with its last final DLC pack, I thought it would be necessary time to do this, of the top 11 Call of Duties of all time, in my opinion. Okay, so just remember that. If it's not your opinion, let me know in the comment section below. Don't freak out and dislike the video just because it's different than yours. Okay, it's important to discuss and we can have discussions about it. But let's get into this, starting with the number 11 spot. Now it truly, truly pains me to put this here because the amount of memories I have on this map are just insane. I mean, I remember coming home every day from school when I was back in 4th grade and just always going on my Xbox playing zombies, and I was just so insanely hyped, and it just hates me. I hate to put it here, I really do, but I'll explain why. So starting off with the campaign, which like I said only kind of accounts for like 10% of the how much I actually like this game. But the campaign was great. It really showed true horrors of World War II. Really did focus on the terrible stuff that went down, and it went on everything. It talked about all fronts, multiple portions of the war, not just the Eastern Front. It was talking about the Western Front, it was talking about the Pacific, everything. It had everything in there, which was great. Had tons of emotion, tons of sad-ass scenes. I remember the 4th mission when you were just sitting there and just in the pile of rubble of dead bodies, and there was just people getting shot in the face. It was brutal, a brutal game. But there wasn't really much character development or story development aside from Rezanov. I mean, he's the only really memorable character from the entire campaign. The other characters, I didn't give a shit about, and nothing really came from that, And also, we have a newer World War II game, and I know a lot of people don't like Call of Duty World War II, but I liked World at War so much, before World War II came out, because I was like, okay, it's the only World War II Call of Duty we have, obviously after Modern Warfare, you know, the original Modern Warfare. So when this new World War II game came out, it kind of makes this game not as exciting anymore, because it's like, oh, well, I have a new World War II game, which has, in my opinion, is a better game. But there are some things, obviously, World at War does better. I think World at War does the horror better. I think World at War does the creepy feel better, because just loading up that menu screen and hearing that music is so nostalgic to me. Then moving on to the multiplayer, this is, I think, where the game kind of falls off pretty damn low. The tanks are pretty cool. I did like the whole tank idea, you know, how they're on certain maps, and so you can go in them and have fun on them. But the whole multiplayer is very unbalanced. It's very broken. Tons of game-breaking glitches and hacks that were just never fixed and never supported throughout the life cycle of the game. MP40 never got patched. That thing is the most overpowered gun in Call of Duty history. One of the most overpowered, I would say. The most maps are just way too big for the amount of people they have. They're just bad layouts. There's not many memorable maps, in my opinion. A few of them are really awesome. I like Dome, Castle. A couple of them were really great, don't get me wrong, Courtyard. But a couple of them are also just absolutely trash. I think the majority of them are. And then you go over to Zombies, which is obviously another 45% of what I care about this game. And the Zombies, it started it all. This is where it started, Zombies, which is one of my favorite things to do in Call of Duty ever, obviously. I'm usually most excited about the Zombies more than anything else. And it is where it started it all. But these 4 maps that World at War have are probably the 4 most boring out of all of them. Aside from Duries, I really enjoy Duries, but the other 3, they're just very boring, simple maps. I mean, we have these insane new maps like Shadows of Evil, Der Eisendrache, Spaceland. You have all these insane maps, Mob of the Dead, Origins, that they have all these awesome Easter egg quests, have all these awesome perks and guns and wonder weapons. And then you look at this and see how plain it is, and it's like, oh, well, yeah. And literally 2 other Call of Duty games have all 4 of the maps remastered than this game, so you don't even really need to go back to this game, unless there are 2 versions of the maps that I do like better in World at War, which would be Shinonuma and Nacht. I do think their portions are a lot better in that game, but Verrucht and Duries, you can just play them in different games and get better versions of them, and there's not much to bring me to want to even play World at War Zombies. So I gotta say, it started it all. It did. This game was really creepy, had a really awesome feel to it. I'm very nostalgic for it. One of the most nostalgic Call of Duties of all time for me. But I'm not letting nostalgia get in the way of what I truly feel is the best Call of Duty game. And I feel like World at War is just, in my opinion, the worst out of all of them. And yes, I'll explain why it's even worse than some other Call of Duty games when I get there. So let's move on to the next one. Coming in at the number 10 spot, I have Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which came out in 2014 and was one of the most interesting releases ever, because it was Sledgehammer Games' first solo Call of Duty. Obviously, they supported and helped Modern Warfare 3 alongside Infinity Ward, but they announced that they would be doing a 3-year cycle to give the developers more time to develop their game, and Sledgehammer decided to come out with Advanced Warfare. And I gotta give them props for the fact that it was their first Call of Duty, their first solo game, and I think they did a good job of capturing what Call of Duty is. I think they did, but obviously there's a lot of things here and there that kind of ruined the experience and kind of made it not as good, and why it's at number 10 rather than being, you know, higher on the list. So let's start off with the campaign. The campaign was actually really interesting. I wasn't too much into the story or the character development or the motives of the characters. None of it really made sense to me. I wasn't big on the story. But the overall gameplay and enjoyability of the campaign in Advanced Warfare was actually pretty high. Like, there were some really cool futuristic gadgets that they had that we've never seen before in Call of Duty, some really awesome different sequences, really awesome action. I'm gonna say, they made the action so amazing in the campaign. You had that one mission in the prison, which was such a fun mission, trying to escape that thing. I don't know, I felt like this campaign was such a fun one to do, but it's not a memorable one because it doesn't have a good story or good characters or any of that. It doesn't. It's just really fun and enjoyable. But they did have Kevin Spacey, which I guess was kind of cool, but obviously Kevin Spacey's like a rapist now, but you know, it is what it is. Next up, multiplayer. I thought multiplayer was the best part of Advanced Warfare, for sure. And there's a lot of things I liked. First of all, they did a lot of unique things that no other Call of Duty ever did before. For example, they started doing score streak attachments, which I was kind of, you know, on the, like, you know, iffy side about that. I didn't think it would work, but it actually ended up being really interesting, and I want to see them do this again. They tried to do it in Infinite Warfare with the score streak variants, but it didn't really work the same way. But these score streak attachments I really did enjoy. You know, they increase the cost of the score streaks, so they're harder to get, but they make them more powerful. Now, I wouldn't say the score streaks are terrible in the multiplayer, but they're not the best in the world. But with the right combinations, you can actually do some really good damage with the score streaks. I just wish they had some more. They also had map-specific score streaks, which is something I would love to see in more Call of Duties. Call of Duty Ghost started it off, and then Advanced Warfare continued, but then we never seen it again after that. And it kind of sucks because I loved map-specific score streaks. I think those are awesome to have. I also like map changes, like when, you know, something happens midway through the map, like the avalanche on that one map, the DLC map, or when it makes you go to another side of the map on recovery, and it kind of just, or the tsunami even, it's things that change the map as you go along. And Call of Duty Ghost started it, and Advanced Warfare did more of it, but they just stopped doing it after that, and I really don't understand why they don't continue doing stuff like this. I mean, they've kind of done a few multiplayer maps here and there that have map changing elements, but there's not as many as I would want to see. And then you get into some of the bad things. Now, weapon variants, I wouldn't say collectively weapon variants is a bad thing. At first, I loved weapon variants. It brought a ton of new replayability to the game because you can try to get all the different weapons, but as advanced supply drops came around, now when supply drops were in it and it was just supply drops, I liked the system. I thought it was alright. But when they started introducing advanced supply drops, it started feeling like you had to pay money to be able to get these guns. Now, obviously you can earn them for free, and you can also, you know, buy them or buy the advanced supply drops for a chance to get them, but it kind of led to people just not really getting them fairly. You know, it didn't show that you got lucky out of a supply drop with the amount of time you played. No, it showed that you spent a lot of money and eventually got lucky. That's kind of what it showed, and it wasn't as good of a system. And the supply drop guns, the DLC guns, they were restrictive to only being in advanced supply drops, so therefore you had to pay for them. You couldn't get them for free. At least in Black Ops 3 and, you know, other Call of Duties, they put the weapons in all supply drops, even the ones you don't have to pay for. So it makes it so it's possible to earn them for free, right? But you couldn't do that. You could only get them from advanced supply drops, and that made it so the only way you can get advanced supply drops for free were from 4 different levels throughout your prestiges. So for each prestige, 4 supply drops. That's it. That's it. They chose to try to get these DLC weapons. I thought that system was incredibly unfair. Not the worst supply drop system, but one of the worst. And I also wasn't a huge fan of the exosuit in this game. I don't mind the exosuit in other Call of Duties, but this game, it just kind of ground my gears a little bit. I don't know what it was. I think you just should jump way too high with it. It just was kind of a clunky system, you know what I'm saying? I did like the colors of this game. This game was beautiful. The maps are pretty beautiful. I love a lot of the maps in Advanced Warfare, surprisingly. They have a ton of really fun and enjoyable maps. Some of the guns are really awesome. So Advanced Warfare has some great elements to it in multiplayer, of course. Then you get into survival and, you know, exo survival, that whole entire mode. I'm not gonna lie, a big part of me had fun with it just because of that final mission, how it kind of teased exo zombies that was gonna come. But there's not much replayability in it, so that doesn't really add up to enjoy, you know, amount of time that zombies can take up, right? But then we have exo zombies, which came out with the first DLC. So first thing that's terrible about it, it's not available at launch. That's already bad enough, you know. It's not that it's not available at launch, but it's the fact that it's not available on disc at all. That's the worst part about it. It's the fact that you have to buy the DLC to get any of the maps. You know, you should always have at least one map on disc so people can try it out, but no, they have to buy the DLC with exo zombies, which I find to be very stupid. Terrible mechanics. I don't enjoy exo zombies mechanics. I don't enjoy a lot of the systems they have. I don't like how there's a million exo zombies everywhere. I don't like EMZs. I don't like most of the Easter eggs. I don't like most of the maps. The story's uninteresting. The maps are all pretty generic locations. They're all like Atlas facilities. There's nothing really interesting about the locations. But it's not everything terrible about exo zombies. There are some good things. For example, some of the wonder weapons are very unique. I love the LZ Limbo and the Trident. They're very unique wonder weapons that we never seen before in Treyarch. The Magnetron's kind of shitty, but you know, it's not really unique either, but it's still something interesting to play with. The Stealth Cauterizer I love. I think it's a fun gun to use. It's not the best in the world, but it's definitely really enjoyable to use. And Carrier is probably the only good map, honestly. Descent's okay too. You'll see in my ranking of every single Zombies map video, which is going to be probably the next month or so. The Exo Zombies maps are pretty damn low because I do include all zombie maps, including Exos, and I do feel like Exo Zombies is the worst adaptation of zombies that we've ever had. I don't think it's 100% terrible, but it's not the best either. So all these reasons are clear-cut, you know, proof that Advanced Warfare deserves the number 10 spot. Coming in at the number 9 spot, I have a Call of Duty that a lot of campaign lovers are going to be pissed about me putting it here, but this is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. I absolutely love the campaign in this game, but I'm going to be honest, that's the only thing I love about it. And like I said, how I care about Call of Duty is only 10% of it is really campaign, to be completely honest. So even though this campaign is easily one of my favorites, one of the most incredible storylines, one of the most epic campaigns, such sad character deaths, such amazing characters in their development, some really insane missions with high stakes. That final mission, don't forget about that one, I believe it was Dust to Dust, that one was so good. Incredible, incredible campaign. I have no problems with this campaign. I think it's almost a perfect campaign, but the rest of the game isn't. So that's what makes it fall behind so far. So then we move on to the multiplayer. The multiplayer of this game is just, it's hit or miss. Honestly, a lot of people absolutely love it, but I have so many problems with it. Things I do like, though, I love the good hit detection. This game has some really nice hit detection. Infinity Ward is kind of known for that, to be completely honest. So, you know, definitely some good hit detection. That's definitely, you know, a factor. Moabs, I love the Moabs. I thought they were much better than nukes because I thought they were harder to get, but also more fair. You know, it doesn't end the game. I feel like nukes were way too easy to get, and they gave you way too good of a reward for doing something not that difficult. But I feel like Moabs are kind of more of a fair sort of a high score streak to go to, or high kill streak, I guess. And they make it so it's only with guns, obviously, so you can't, you know, base it off of more streaks. I like that. I'm glad they had Moabs. I'm also glad that this game introduced the point streak system, which was obviously implemented into score streaks, which I think score streaks are a lot better, of a system. But at least, you know, Modern Warfare 3 is the first Call of Duty to implement it, so it makes objective play more important. So people actually have motivation to secure flags, you know, capture objectives, get bombs, whatever it may be. It actually makes people want to do it more often because you get streaks out of it. So I'm glad they did that. But that's really all I have about this. So honestly, this is one of my least favorite in terms of maps. The maps in this game are pretty trash. Not a lot of memorable maps. Not a lot at all. Aside from like Dome, there's just not a lot of memorable maps. I mean, you look at them, they're all really gray and bland and gross looking. The graphics are a downgrade from Modern Warfare 2 in my opinion. I think they're a huge downgrade. Which is weird because the graphics actually look kind of nice in campaign, but for some reason multiplayer, it doesn't look that good. The kill streaks are not that good, not compared to Modern Warfare 2's, obviously the predecessor of the Modern Warfare series. There also is way too many things, way too similar to Modern Warfare 2. It almost felt like they took Modern Warfare 2, made it into Modern Warfare 3, but changed what made Modern Warfare 2 so good, so kind of made Modern Warfare 3 not as good as Modern Warfare 2, in my honest opinion. Obviously, you'll see my review of Modern Warfare 2. What I mean by that. Death streaks were still a thing. Nobody likes death streaks. They should not be part of Call of Duty. They added support streaks, which I don't like either, completely honest. And it just was not a fun Call of Duty at all, in my opinion. One of my least favorites, obviously. And then we go on to Survival and Spec Ops. I never really got too interested in Spec Ops and Survival mode. I mean, they were kind of fun here and there, but they're not very replayable. They get boring really quickly after you play them once. And Survival is just kind of, it's like playing against bots in private matches. It's really not that exciting. I do like how they added it, but it's nowhere nearly as replayable and enjoyable as Zombies is, or even Extinction, or really anything else that Call of Duty has done. And Modern Warfare 3, they tried, definitely. They did something that was a third game mode, which is great, but it's not to anywhere sort of a high level as what Zombies is. I think Zombies is 100% better. I think every adaptation of Zombies is a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyable. Even Exo Zombies I find to be more fun than this, in my honest opinion. So Modern Warfare 3 comes in at the number 9 spot. Coming in the number 8 spot, I have a pretty controversial Call of Duty. This is Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Infinite Warfare released in 2016, the very end, in November. Very interesting lead up to this game. The campaign trailer was probably one of the most hated trailers of all time, and not because of the trailer itself, but because of the direction Call of Duty was going in. It was the third Call of Duty in a row to have some sort of a boots off the ground system where people were boost jumping, and it was futuristic, and people didn't like that. They wanted Modern Warfare 4, they wanted Ghost 2, they wanted something modern and something different, so it was very conflicted. But then we started getting stuff like the zombies trailers, and to me, I was one of the people who was actually looking forward to it because I thought the zombies looked pretty fun. Multiplayer, yes, it didn't look all that exciting, but I was still looking forward to it. Infinite Warfare had some really good parts to it and also some really bad parts. It's one of those type of Call of Duties where I wouldn't say it's terrible. I think people give it a lot less praise than what I feel like it deserves. But starting off with the campaign, it was actually a very epic and underrated campaign. People don't really like to play it or even try to play it because they feel like, oh, it's futuristic, it's probably going to be shit. But no, not even in the slightest. This campaign is such an epic feeling campaign. You have the pretty amazing character development. Don't forget about Ethan. I mean, the ending was just such a sad and emotional ending. I think Infinity Ward has always done pretty good with campaigns. I don't think we've ever had a bad Infinity Ward campaign in my opinion. And this one just kind of added on to the epicness of all campaigns that are Infinity Ward. But the only downside, it would be, yes, it's like a third futuristic game in a row, fifth if you count Ghost as a futuristic game, and so I kind of understand why people didn't like it. But come on, you can't tell me the space theme wasn't that epic. We haven't seen space before. We did in, you know, small missions here and there in Ghost and stuff like that, but this was like a game that was primarily in space, and that's completely different than what we've ever seen before, so it was unique. Therefore, I felt like it deserved at least some praise. And then we move on to the multiplayer, which had some really good parts and also some really bad parts. This is probably the worst part of Infinite Warfare. I loved how the variants were purchasable with salvage. I really liked the whole supply drop system actually. It was one of the better supply drop systems that we had because the variants, instead of you having to earn them from supply drops, you can earn salvage via contracts, or you know, you can get them for supply drop bonuses or from getting duplicates, and you can use those to just straight up purchase the variants yourself, so you can work towards the variants rather than just having to rely on luck like you would in Advanced Warfare or Black Ops 3 for DLC guns. And then DLC guns, they even made most of them free. You just unlock them from a really easy challenge, but if you have the season pass, you just straight up get them free, which was a really good system that we haven't seen in, you know, Call of Duty that often. You know what I'm saying? We saw it in Black Ops 2 and a little bit of Black Ops Call of Duty Ghost, but other than that, DLC guns were something that you had to actually work for, right? And you could work for it if you don't have the season pass, but if you have the season pass, you just get them for free, which was a great system in my opinion. But then there's also some bad things, like the maps kind of suck. I'm gonna be honest, there's not that many interesting maps in Infinite Warfare. I look at them and I'm like, there's just not many good ones. I could think of a few, and the only really good maps are remakes of previous maps, which is kind of just saying something. I mean, there's a few decent ones. I do like Throwback, the baseball stadium map. I think that map's pretty cool, but that's really it. There's just not many good maps. They all look kind of gross. There's nothing really, you know, there's nothing pizzazzy about them. They have a few decent DLC maps, but other than that, the maps aren't very good. The streaks kind of suck. Streaks are very underpowered in this game. They do have the streak variants, but even then, they're not that great. That's just how I feel about this multiplayer. It's just not one of the best ones. It does have a similar feel to Black Ops 3, which a lot of people didn't like that, but to me, it kind of just felt like another year of Black Ops 3, but you know, with some certain differences like the variant system, which I did enjoy, as well as getting DLC guns for free. But then you also had worse maps, so it was kind of like a trade-off sort of a thing. But yeah, nowhere nearly good as Black Ops 3, but it kind of felt similar in some ways. So you might be wondering, why the hell is Infinite Warfare higher than World at War, Advanced Warfare, Modern Warfare 3, if I've kind of bashed the multiplayer a little bit. I said the campaign's pretty good, but like I said, campaign only is really 10% of how much I really care about certain Call of Duty games. So why is it a little higher than a lot of the other Call of Duties? Because of the zombies. The zombies is so much fun in this game. I really don't understand when people say they hate it or they think it's terrible or the worst adaptation of zombies. I don't think it's the best adaptation of zombies by any means. I do think Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, even probably Black Ops 1, nah, maybe just Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3 are better zombies. Infinite Warfare, I think, is better than a lot of other zombies adaptations that we've had. Better than Exo Zombies, better than World War II, better than Black Ops 1, better than World at War. I think IW Zombies is fucking incredible. Unique maps with all different themes. That's one of my favorite parts about it. You have Spaceland, you have Raven in the Redwoods, you have Shall and Shuffle, Attack of the Radioactive Thing, Beast from Beyond, all having different themes. You got the Spaceland 80s theme, which is like disco themed. The 90s and Raven in the Redwoods, which is like rave and party themed. You got, and then Slasher Odds, they have the horror elements in there as well. Shall and Shuffle is like kung fu themed and like dancing, disco type themed. Kind of like sort of how Spaceland was a little disco themed, but you know, it was more astronaut, space themed as well. Raven, Attack of the Radioactive Thing was monster themed, like a monster movie 50 type thing. And then you had Beasts from Beyond, which was a little different. It didn't really have a theme to it, more so it was kind of like a finishing finale with the big ass Mistopheles boss fight, super Easter egg, which that's another thing that's so awesome. The Easter egg quests are really fun. They just are really enjoying. I mean, I can never get bored of doing Spaceland's Easter egg, honestly. I can never get bored of Spaceland itself, honestly. It's one of my favorite maps of all time. The wonder weapons are so fucking awesome. They're unique, they're interesting, they're different, and they're really fun to use. The katana in Shall and Shuffle is one of the best wonder weapons in zombies history, including Treyarch. Only thing I would say that's a negative about IW Zombies is the fact that the story is pretty uninteresting. I have no really, you know, sort of caring for the story at all. Like, Treyarch's story is amazing, I love it. World War II's story is pretty decent too. But the story in this is just like, it's just not there. It's just really not there. But either way, I really do enjoy Infinite Warfare, specifically for the zombies. So that comes in at the number 8 spot. Coming in at the number 7 spot, I have Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This is one of the most favorited Call of Duty games in the franchise, easily. One of the most loved, one of the most praised, one of the most nostalgic and classic Call of Duties out there. This is when Call of Duty picked up pace and became a big game that it is today. This is when it started to become the big game that it is today. But I don't like it as much as a lot of other people do. And the reason why is because the majority of people who absolutely adore this game love it for their nostalgic purposes. They had really big memories and really great memories of this game as a kid. And therefore, they gravitate towards loving this Call of Duty the most. And it is one of the most fun, I agree. But there's tons of problems with it that I think need to be kind of explained. Campaign, first of all, is absolutely incredible. That is something I cannot say is bad in any means necessary. The campaign in this game is one of the greatest of all time. Just like Modern Warfare 3, it has an incredible campaign. It's emotional, easily the most cinematic we've ever had, amazing soundtrack. That final mission was just amazing, throwing the knife into Shepard's eye at the end. It feels like a movie. This whole campaign feels like a movie. It's incredible. But remember, campaign is only 10% of, you know, what I care in a Call of Duty game. So this is where, you know, things become more important when I'm talking about the multiplayer. So multiplayer has some great things about it. First of all, the streaks are amazing. I love the kill streaks in this game, but people don't play the objective because of the kill streaks. If they were score streaks, it would work a lot better, but since they're kill streaks, people don't really care about playing the objective. They just want to get kills and they want to stay alive, so that, you know, promotes camping and sitting in corners and using the most overpowered guns in the game because you want to get a nuke. So it kind of makes the play styles become very bad, toxic, I guess is the word for it. Some really good memorable maps, I would say. You got High Rise, Rust, Terminal, couple others. There's some really good ones in there, but there's also some really bad ones as well. So that's, you know, something to remember, that they have really good maps, but they also have really terrible maps. So it's kind of like a, you know, side-by-side type thing. It's pretty fun overall. I gotta say, one of the most fun Call of Duties that has that fun factor. But then we get to the bad stuff. It's completely unbalanced and broken. You got noob tubes, one-man army, danger close, completely broken, bad weapon balance, and just overall bad system. I mean, the creative class system's okay, but there's so many inconsistencies within the perks. Like perk 3, you're only going to use Commando Pro, like that's just kind of how it is. Perk 1 and perk 2, you can kind of switch between a few, but for the most part people like to use, you know, one or the other, and it makes for there's no diversity in play style. Everyone plays the same way. I made plenty of videos talking about, you know, why I think Modern Warfare 2 is overrated, and people say it's way too good when I don't think it's as good as people say it is. And that's just kind of why. I think it's a really fun game, has tons of memorable, you know, maps and locations and weapons and stuff like that, but at its core, it's an unbalanced game that is broken. And the only reason why it is because Infinity Ward broke up as a studio midway through the life cycle of this game, so they weren't able to support it in the way that they wanted to. So let's just talk about Spec Ops real quick. I think it's fun. It's enjoyable, just like Modern Warfare 3, but there's no replayability there. Not like Zombies, there is no replayability in Spec Ops. You played it once or twice, and then you just never play it again. So, just like Campaign, just like Spec Ops MWs 2, 3, or I don't think it's replayable enough in terms to actually make the game more enjoyable than what I see it as. Multiplayer is great, Campaign great, Spec Ops, yeah, okay. That's kind of how I feel about Modern Warfare 2. Obviously, they have the problems here and there, but that's why I believe it is just in the middle, basically, kind of in the middle, sort of, at the number 7 spot. Coming in at the number 6 spot, I've got Call of Duty Ghosts. A Call of Duty that a lot of people hate on, a lot of people say it's the worst in the series, or at least one of the worst. But surprisingly enough, in the past recent years, there's been more and more people saying that they feel like Call of Duty Ghosts was very, very underrated. And I completely agree with those people. I think Call of Duty Ghosts got way too much hate for some rightful reasons, yes. But as time went on throughout the Call of Duty Ghosts life cycle, the game increasingly became better and better and better, and actually ended up being a very solid game at the end of the life cycle, in my honest opinion. Starting off with the campaign, it's a very beautiful atmosphere. I mean, the whole apocalyptic theme is something we haven't really explored in previous Call of Duty games. It's to see a world that is not really still going under normal, you know, laws and stuff like that. Everything kind of went to shit, and it's in an apocalypse, and that's what's happening. There's a war within an apocalypse. I really did like that a lot more than people kind of give it credit for, and that ending, as much as people hated the cliffhanger, I thought it was really awesome, and really did kind of build and set up for a Ghost 2 pretty damn well. But of course it never happened. They ended up canceling Ghost 2 and moving on to Infinite Warfare, and then they're now probably doing Modern Warfare 4. But the whole final mission, just a lot of the campaign I did enjoy. It was one of my favorite campaigns. Story-wise, didn't really have much good story there. There really wasn't many memorable characters or anything. But it definitely had a fun campaign that I had enjoyment time on. And they had a lot of explosions and action and intense sequences. I mean, literally every level had something really crazy go on. It was just a really hyped up campaign. This whole game was hyped up. One of the most hyped up Call of Duties for me personally. The multiplayer. Now, there's a lot of bad things about the multiplayer, I'll be honest. Like the SATCOM system that they added, the created class system was... Honestly, I like the created class system, but I could see why people wouldn't like it. It's obviously not as good as Pick 10. The on-disc maps were kind of bad. There wasn't really many good on-disc maps. A lot of them were way too big for the 6v6 playstyle, so that kind of made people in matches take a lot longer. People were camping more often, and that kind of sucked a little bit. And it just didn't feel like there was much to the Call of Duty. The streaks weren't very good. They were kind of weak, and it kind of just made it feel not really like, or, you know, Call of Duty like Black Ops 2 or anyone nearly great as those older Call of Duty games, because of the good kill streaks, which is something that makes Call of Duty games usually pretty good. But then as time went on, the DLC maps are amazing. I love the DLC maps in Call of Duty Ghosts. They have some of the greatest maps of all time, including Gold Rush, Fog, Bayview, all these different ones. They're just so good. And why they're so good is because they're unique. They all have unique features. They have map-changing elements. They have map-based score streaks that you can only get out of field orders, which is another thing I loved. The field orders was amazing. I wish that system would come back, but it just never has. Field orders is such a fun and cool system. And when you make map-specific streaks and map-specific features, like, I don't know, even a door that closes and opens from a button, or logs that fall over when you shoot them enough, or a tree that knocks over and creates a new way of going up places. Like, I don't need Call of Duty to be as dynamic as Battlefield, where you can actually blow up buildings and completely level out a map. I don't need that. What I need is what Call of Duty Ghosts had, and what Advanced Warfare kind of had, and what they have really slacked on in the past few Call of Duties is dynamic maps that change as time goes on, different elements, different things happening, and don't forget about the map-based streaks that you can only get on certain maps, because it makes maps feel different from each other. They're not the same cookie-cutter maps with the same layouts. They all feel different, and they had some really great DLC maps in this game. The weapon balance was actually pretty good. I felt like I was never using one gun only. I felt like I was always going around different guns. Personally, I thought this was one of the best in terms of balance for weapons. And it just kind of made for a really fun Call of Duty game. I'm going to be completely honest. They also finally added character customization to this game, which was completely new to Call of Duty. We'd never seen this before, other than obviously Black Ops 1 with the face paint, but this was the first time it was on a full-out system, which it didn't seem like it was that important in this game, but it really did start the change for, giving us more customization options within Call of Duty, because we didn't really have much previously. So that was great. Overall, I loved the UI. The user interface in this multiplayer, I loved. I love how it shows your kills and deaths in the top right. And I didn't really like where the kill feed was. I wish that was, where it usually is. But other than that, I liked the minimap. I liked the score. I just liked how it looked. It looked like a very well done Call of Duty. I personally think this is one of my favorites. That's why it's at the number 6 spot. But last but not least, we got to talk about Extinction for Call of Duty Ghosts. Gotta mention Extinction. I thought Extinction was fun for what it was. Still never going to be as great as Zombies, but Extinction has a first time enjoyment to it. The first time playing a map is actually a ton of fun, but I never feel the need to play it again after I beat in it. I never feel any sort of a want to play it. It's not that enjoyable. It's very cookie cutter. Every game tends to go the same way. Like Zombies, every game can be different. You can have a different game. Like, let's say you're playing Origins. Literally every game you can do something different. You can go for one staff this game, you can go for another staff this game, you can go for different guns out of the box this game. But I feel like Extinction, every single game literally goes the same, and that kind of sucks, kind of makes it unreplayable. But I think it was a fun game mode for the time being. I think Zombies is definitely better, but they had a good shot at it, and I applaud them for that. You also have the Squads game mode, which I'm not really going to talk about because I didn't really play it that much, to be honest, but it was there. Something extra to do, I guess, but that's Ghost. Comes in at the number 6 spot. And we are now officially in the top 5 best Call of Duties of all time. I'm really excited to get into these ones, because the rest of them I think are the really good Call of Duties of the series. Top 3 I would say are like the masterpieces. I think these next 2 are pretty damn good, but they're not, on the masterpiece-ness. Next up we have, in the number 5 spot, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, or Modern Warfare Remastered. And kind of how I am ranking this Call of Duty is, I'm basing it off of both Call of Duties, not just one or the other, not just picking the original or just a new one. This is basing it off of the original Call of Duty 4, but also the upgraded version that came out alongside Infinite Warfare called Modern Warfare Remastered. Honestly, if Modern Warfare Remastered never came out, this Call of Duty would be back a few spots, probably like right before Modern Warfare 2, which is pretty fucking far back if you ask me. So this is one of the most improved Call of Duties because of this remastered title, and a lot of people say that Modern Warfare Remastered ruined Call of Duty 4. A lot of people say it made it worse. A lot of people say it sucked. It took what Call of Duty 4 was and just destroyed it. And I always sit there like, how? I'm always so confused, because Modern Warfare Remastered feels like the same exact game of Call of Duty 4 with updated graphics, and the only thing different is that the fact that they added tons of new stuff, like new guns, new melee weapons, new camos, and all sorts of new stuff that are really available in supply drops only, but you can get from salvage points from getting duplicates and such. Of course, the supply drop system in the game could have been 20 times better if they had contracts and such, so you can actually get the weapons easier, because it felt like it took way too long to get them, so you kind of had to spend money. But you could, work towards it if you tried. I did for the most part, but sometimes you're just like, well, I just can't. I don't have the time for that, and you just want these new weapons, so you buy them. But the good thing I didn't, fall into that trap. But you didn't have to buy them. You could still play the game normally. If you get killed by somebody with a different weapon, a DLC weapon, it's not that hard to pretend that it's already a weapon in the game or something. It's basically like they took a 10-year-old game updated the graphics, and then added some DLC to it. That's basically what this is, and I love that because Modern Warfare is was already one of my favorites back in the day. Obviously, as time went on and new Call of Duty came out, I was like, okay, this one's not as good as it was because of certain reasons. Now, I'm going to start off talking about the campaign because I've gone on a tangent for the past 2 minutes, and that's not what I'm trying to do with this video. But the campaign in this game is not as good as Modern Warfare 2 or 3 for sure, but does not mean it's not amazing. It's easily the first it's the first modern Call of Duty. That's something that needs to be mentioned. It's the first modern campaign. This was revolutionary for its time because we were seeing all these World War II shooters, and then we just, boom, we get a Modern Warfare shooter, and we're just like, what? And it ended up doing a lot better than a lot of developers thought it would, to be completely honest. Had some amazing characters, and overall mission places, like a lot of the locations were awesome. So I thought the campaign was pretty fun. But multiplayer, considering there's no zombies or spec ops or third game mode, there's a lot of pressure on the multiplayer mode within this game. A lot of pressure, because it's the only thing to play other than campaign. So that becomes kind of forcing it to be very, very important. I kind of wish they had zombies in Modern Warfare Remastered. That'd be kind of awesome if they had like a separate zombies mode, which on maybe just some multiplayer maps you just throw zombies in. That would be cool. But I digress. Modern Warfare 4 just overall, or Modern Warfare Remastered overall, just made it more fresh and enjoyable for me. It was simple, but it was fun. And that's one of the problems I have with the multiplayer, is it feels too simple at times. Like, there's just only 3 kill streaks. Like, really, that's not really much to play with. But that's why I love Modern Warfare Remastered so much, is because they added stuff like game modes and different, limited time events and different weapons that made it feel fresh again. It made it feel different. It doesn't last for that long. I don't really play it anymore. But during the life cycle of Infinite Warfare, I did play Infinite Warfare a decent amount, but I only really played it for the zombies. So if I wanted a multiplayer experience, boom, I had Modern Warfare Remastered to play. So I applaud this game for giving me great times of enjoyment between, Infinite Warfare's life cycle. And honestly, talking about it makes me want to go back and play it, because there's still some weapons I still haven't gotten, like the Rangers, and I still want to play and get them. But they added some awesome game modes like Prop Hunt, which we've never seen before in Call of Duty, or at least in, console Call of Duty, and that was awesome. They added Slasher, which is like Michael Myers, which is something we haven't seen in Call of Duty either. So I was just blown away by the support that Raven Software made on Modern Warfare Remastered. I think we should definitely get more remastered titles in the future. I don't know if we will, but I think it could definitely make some older Call of Duty games a lot better, like World at War and Modern Warfare 2. They can make those games 20 times better. But yes, that comes in at the number 5 spot. Coming in at the number 4 spot, I have Call of Duty World War II, the most recent Call of Duty within the franchise. It just came out last year, and we just finished the DLC season with it couple weeks ago with DLC 4. Honestly, World War II has had some up and downs. It's been feeling like it was one of my favorite Call of Duties, and it's been times where it feels like it's one of my least favorite. And there's certain reasons for that. So let's start off with the campaign. First of all, the campaign was really good. I love this campaign a lot because it was World War II. It was a World War II game that was recent, so it had better graphics obviously than like a World at War. And it really did capture some really awesome portions of the war. The only problem I had with it is it didn't capture all portions. I wish it did, but they did have some pretty epic moments in there. Like the D-Day mission in the beginning was incredible. The characters, like Private Daniels, they really had amazing character development, and just the cutscenes were just so well put together. I mean, the graphics were fucking beautiful. I don't know what it is about Sledgehammer with their cutscenes, but Advanced Warfare and this game, the cutscenes are out of this world. I don't know what it is, but they just do amazing cutscenes. And I really did like this campaign. It was one of the most hyped up Call of Duties because it was bringing it back to boots on the ground. But part of me feels like they kind of went too far back. And what I'll mean by that is, in the multiplayer, the created class system was one thing I really didn't like at launch. It felt like it was way too simple. There wasn't many options. There wasn't much customization. It was kind of like, older Call of Duties, which some people like, but personally I don't like. It was taking the older Call of Duty system and just making it even more simpler than that. You get one perk, you get one primary, you get one secondary, and then there's a few different divisions with different perks in there, and it's like, it was just such a weird way to do created class. I didn't like it, tons of other people didn't like it, but thankfully they came out with an update called the Divisions Overhaul, completely changing the created class, making it way better. Still not perfect, but it's way better, to the point where I went from not really liking this game that much to actually kind of really liking it. Around the time DLC 2 came out, that's when this all happened, and they made tons of other updates to the game, making it actually a really good game. I liked the game from the beta. The beta I loved. I enjoyed the beta like crazy. And then the game came out, and that's when I was kind of at the point where I was like, I don't know if I like it that much. And the first 2 months of the game, I was kind of like that. But then once the Division Overhaul came out in April, man, I started playing this game a lot more. They came out with contracts to make DLC guns way easier to get. Overall, it's a World War II game, and people, forget to realize that. And they have tons of, goofy things in. Obviously, as of recently, they've added in tons of, new camos that are animated and stuff like that. But I don't mind it because I know that they still made a realistic World War II shooter for the campaign. There were people complaining about there being females and stuff, and I was just sitting there like, dude, it's the multiplayer. Who cares about what there is in the multiplayer? I just want to have fun. And I gotta be honest, World War II delivered on the fun factor. Some of the maps weren't that great, I gotta be honest. Some of the maps are pretty bad. Some of the maps are actually really good too. The war mode was different. I do enjoy that they added it, but I never played it as much as I thought I would. I wish they utilized the war maps in a better way, maybe using them as like 12v12 domination matches or something, or TDMs. Maybe if they just utilized more of the game and they made more updates and changes, it would really, really innovate the multiplayer in Call of Duty World War II a lot more. We also had the addition of the headquarters, which personally I really liked the headquarters. I thought it was a cool new system that allowed us to kind of party up with our friends and just look at each other with different customization that we had in our characters. I like that. The supply drop system seemed fair and more, cosmetic, more so than actually adding weapons. The weapon variants I thought were cool. They weren't cosmetic changing, so it was kind of fair, or they were only cosmetic changing, so it was fair. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, the most enjoyment I find of World War II, though, to be completely honest, is within one singular map called Shipment. I fucking love playing Shipment in this game. I don't know what it is. I love hopping on and just going on a game of Shipment and just destroying as many people as possible. But the only thing that ruins Shipment is Requisitions, which is another negative of this game. Requisitions is a perk that should not be in the game. I don't know why they kept it. I don't understand why they love Requisitions so much. Everyone complains about it. Everyone and their mother, and then they kept it in, and they tried balancing it a few times, but it just makes Shipment domination really unplayable in some ways. But I still have tons of fun on Shipment when people aren't using Requisitions on the other team, and it's just a ton of fun. I really do find World War II to be an enjoyable multiplayer experience. A lot of people don't agree with me. Yes, there's tons of problems. Yes, there's way more problems than there should be, actually, but overall it ended up being an enjoyable experience for me. But then we have the zombies mode, the Nazi zombies mode. I love the zombies in this game, but I also don't. It's like a love-hate relationship. So some of the maps I have a ton of fun on. So for example, the Final Reich, or honestly most of the maps, I love most of the maps in this game. I think they're all standout maps. The storyline is pretty damn good. I don't really follow it that much, but it's still a pretty damn good storyline. But you look through the maps, you see them. The Final Reich, I did, everything that there is to do on the Final Reich, and it's such a fun map. I love the wonder weapons. I love the Easter egg. Final Reich is easily my favorite map in World War II, hands down. Then you have the Darkest Shore, which is probably my least favorite, and the Darkest Shore was just kind of a weird map. It just really was. It's just the way they handled it. I don't know, but I still enjoyed playing it, and I think the Ripsaw was one of the most fun guns to use, or wonder weapons to use in Nazi Zombies. Then you have the Shadowed Throne, which a lot of people consider to be the best. I consider it to be pretty good, but there's also a lot of negatives about it that I feel like need to be kind of, addressed. Then you have the Tortured Path, which people didn't like, but I actually really fucking love the Tortured Path. I love how they innovated how zombies works in a completely new experience of 3 separate maps that you can play on. I just wish they, unlocked the 3 survival maps for everybody instead of having to complete the Easter eggs. I mean, I did the Easter eggs myself, but it kind of sucks that, some people can't do it, can't play the maps without doing the Easter eggs. It's just kind of stupid. And then DLC 4, the Frozen Dawn, it has been a ton of fun. I still haven't done the Easter egg, actually, but from what I've seen, it is a ton of fun, the whole map. I have gotten all the wonder weapons, though, and I've used all those. It's a lot of fun. I think it's enjoyable. But I think World War II as a whole is kind of not that great. I forgot to mention Grostenhuis, ton of fun. Survival map, obviously, but it's still a ton of fun. But as a whole, the mode just kind of suffers from a few different things. It suffers from the maps being too similar to one another. I mean, they never changed the perks. Every map has the same perks. Every map has the same consumables. The majority of the weapons kind of transfer over to the maps. The majority of the boss zombies transfer over to the maps. So it kind of makes it feel not special, any of the maps. The soundtrack, the same soundtrack is used for every single map. They never changed up the soundtrack like most zombies maps would do it in other Call of Duties. So it kind of just felt like they were all too similar to one another, and that kind of made the overall experience not as great. But overall, I thought Not Zombies was a ton of fun, and I did enjoy it overall. So that's why World War II comes in at the number 4 spot, and let's get into the top 3. Coming in at the number 3 spot, I've got Call of Duty Black Ops, the first in the Black Ops franchise, which ended up being the biggest franchise or story in the entirety of the Call of Duty series. So, I absolutely love Black Ops 1. I think this is one of my favorite. Obviously, it's number 3, so it's got to be one of my favorite. And just by process of elimination, you can see that the top 3 are going to be the 3 Black Ops games. I think Black Ops, the whole entire series, is the greatest series we've ever had in terms of certain things, of course, not in terms of everything. Starting off with the campaign, I think Call of Duty Black Ops has probably one of the best campaigns of all time. Not better than Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 3, but still pretty dang good. Probably my 3rd favorite. I really loved all the characters like Frank Woods and Mason and all these other characters. We just had so many interesting things happening with them. So many technological things going on, like the brainwashing and the numbers, the hallucinations that they were seeing. It just was a very interesting story because Modern Warfare was more based on reality. It was more of going through an actual war that could very well happen in the future, which is World War III, of course. But this was kind of basing it off of the past, which was the Vietnam War, the Cold War, other elements around, other wars around this time period, right? Around like the 50s to like the 60s. And we saw all these things happening, but it also included things that never actually happened, like these hallucination, brainwashing things, which could have happened. We don't know 100%. There are, evidence behind it, but it kind of went with its own story that what didn't actually happen in real life. It's kind of its own thing, but it's still a very entertaining story to watch. And personally, I think this is one of the most darkest and grittiest campaigns we've ever had. I mean, yes, World at War was really gritty and dark, but like this one had some really true deep things in it, and it's a little more current, it's a little more modern, so it feels a little more like what we expected. We have Vietnam War missions in it as well, which was awesome. I absolutely love playing in the Vietnam War. I would love to have another Vietnam Call of Duty, which I think Sledgehammer's next game might be Vietnam, so that's something to look out for. But let's talk about the multiplayer. So the multiplayer, I think, is a ton of fun. I mean, there's not many problems with it. I do have a few. The graphics are pretty trash in Black Ops 1. Some of the mechanics, it feels clunky. Some of the different, mechanics, there are still some bullshit like Last Stand and a couple other small things. But it is a very balanced Call of Duty game in terms of the overall created class system. It does feel like a balanced system. I think the weapons need some more tuning. Obviously, the SMGs are completely underperformed against the ARs, which shouldn't really be done. The snipers are completely worthless. Shotguns aren't that good. It's just the gun balance isn't very good. A lot of people tend to use the same weapons all the time, but I'm talking about, when I say balance, I'm talking about the overall balance in the created class, like what items you use, what gear you use. There's a lot of different options, a lot of customization. It also was the first Call of Duty to actually add any sort of character customization. Obviously, Ghost was the first to make it a big deal. This was the first to add in any customization, which was obviously the face paint, which was awesome. The kill streaks are pretty damn awesome, but yet again, they are kill streaks, so they do promote camping. They do promote people not actually playing the objective, which kind of sucks when that happens, but that's why the next Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 ended up adding in point streaks, and then Black Ops 2 obviously made it even better with the score streaks. But yeah, multiplayer also has a ton of fun maps. There's a shitload of good Black Ops 1 maps. You have Nuketown, Firing Range, Stadium, just tons of the Jungle map. Such good maps, and a lot of them were getting actually remade into Black Ops 4, which is really exciting. But I just think this is easily one of the best games in terms of maps. Tons of great maps to play on. And it also added in party game modes, which we haven't really seen before, so that was awesome to see. The wager matches, the different COD points you can wager with not the COD points we know of today, but the older COD points. I thought that was great. Then we get into the zombies. Now, I think the zombies in this game, it's kind of what started it all. So where it became popular. Obviously World at War started it, but this is where it actually became popular and started the zombies that we know and love today. You know, they kind of started building upon the story, building upon Easter eggs and stuff, because we didn't really have big Easter egg quests in World at War. This is when we started to get them. But Black Ops 1 overall isn't as good as people say in terms of zombies, because you look at the maps. We have Kino and 5, which I think Kino is a very classic map, very nostalgic for it, but it's not a good map. It gets really boring really quickly. 5, I think, is more fun, but it's also just really annoying. There's too many obnoxious things in it. I don't really count Dead Ups Arcade as a map, so you skip that. Ascension is pretty damn good, one of my favorites in the game, but you got the damn monkeys that just ruin everything, and a couple other obnoxious sort of elements to the map. Call of the Dead is almost a masterpiece. Can't complain about that map. Shangri-La, people love. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And Moon, people love. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think they have a really good storyline going with Moon. Overall, the whole story in Black Ops 1 in general is one of my favorites for storyline-wise. But for gameplay, I feel like things get repetitive and it's not that enjoyable compared to other zombies that we've had in Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, or even Infinite Warfare, stuff like that. So zombies is great in this game. It's classic, it's nostalgic, but I don't think it's anywhere nearly compared to the amazing zombies experiences that we've had later on in different Call of Duties. So that's why I think Black Ops deserves a number 3 spot. Coming in at the number 2 spot, I have Call of Duty Black Ops 3. So Black Ops 3 has a lot to do. This is probably the most replayable Call of Duty out of all of them, obviously not counting Black Ops 4, which isn't out yet, because I strongly believe Black Ops 4 is going to be the most replayable. But out of every other Call of Duty, Black Ops 3 just has the most replay value to me, because there's just the most stuff to do. There's the most of each thing. There's the most DLC content, so the most stuff to go for, but that doesn't mean that there's no problems with the game, because there's tons. Trust me, there are tons of problems, but I think the good things just kind of outweigh the bad in most cases. So let's start with the campaign, which is easily the worst part of Black Ops 3. This is the part that kind of drags it down from being number 1. Somewhat. There's a couple other things that kind of drag it down, but this campaign is just so bad. If you only cared about campaign, Black Ops 3 would be your least favorite Call of Duty, because this campaign is just bad, okay? It did not connect to any past campaigns. It was its completely own story. It didn't have any enjoyable story or characters. It was just terrible. It didn't connect to the Ember trailer, which we got this amazing Ember teaser trailer, which was just so good. We thought it was going to focus on, human enhancements and how it's unfair and unjust, and then war that goes down after it. We were like, okay, this actually looks really damn good. And then they give us the game, and it's like some guy on acid or something. He's just not hallucinating. It's literally, it's the pinnacle of retardation in Call of Duty history, I got to say. I can't support this campaign. It's just not a good one. There really isn't much to say about it other than it's just not good. It's got some cool elements to it in terms of the fact that it was the first co-op campaign. There was a level up system. Stuff like that is good. They also had the Nightmares campaign, which really it was just in regular missions, just instead of enemies it was zombies. It wasn't that special at all. It wasn't anything like what we were expecting. So in the end, it just was a bad campaign that I just would never play again ever in my entire life. I actually regret playing it even once. So yeah, that's how I feel about campaign. Now you might be wondering, how the hell is this game at number 2 if I literally just bashed the hell out of campaign? Remember, campaign's only 10% of the factoring in for how much I care about a Call of Duty, for my list, of course. So campaign, even though I think it would get a 0 out of 10, honestly, maybe a 1 out of 10 at most, there's still the multiplayer and the zombies to make up for it. And the multiplayer in this game is easily one of my favorites of all time. Now, of course, the exosuits aren't something I am a fan of. Like, I don't want exosuits in every Call of Duty, but I'm okay with having it every now and then. And this is easily the best exosuit Call of Duty that we had. It made the exosuit system not too over the top. It kind of made it so it was balanced and that you couldn't really go, higher than Superman himself. It was somewhat grounded. And in some situations, you just didn't want to boost jump because it would put you at a disadvantage. So sometimes you wouldn't do it. It was much more fair than Advanced Warfare, so that was great. I didn't like that. Easily the best looking Call of Duty that we've ever had. Not just in terms of multiplayer, but in terms of zombies, campaign, everything. Easily the best looking. Best graphics, best everything. Not the last gen version I'm talking about. The current gen version of Black Ops 3. But easily the best looking. I think it's better looking than Infinite Warfare, I think it's better looking than World War II, even though World War II does have better looking cutscenes, I would say. I think Black Ops 3 overall in-game is the best looking, so that's good. The score streaks are very, very powerful, very, very good. Not better than Black Ops 2 or Modern Warfare 2 or any of those Call of Duties, but they still have some really powerful score streaks like the Cerberus, the Wraith, stuff like that, and they're just fun score streaks to go for. I have a ton of fun pub stopping in this game. I think one of the main reasons I love this game, honestly, comes from the fact that I'm really good at it. This is one of my best Call of Duties of all time. Like, I'm just insanely good at Black Ops 3. I eat ass when I hop on multiplayer. I go like 60-10 most of my games if I'm playing Nuketown, especially. I don't know what it is. I think I'm just very good with the exosuits in this game. I just mastered it. I played it a ton when it first came out, so maybe that's why. The gun balance is pretty good overall. There's no terrible guns in the game. Every gun at least serves somewhat of a purpose. Like, me and my friends try to play House Wars, which is this game mode that we made up where we use the worst guns possible on classes and we kind of do a defending and attacking thing on Nuketown houses, right? And we try to use the worst guns possible, so I make classes with the worst guns in the game. But even the worst guns in the game are still pretty good. Like the Gorgon, the Argus, which is, look, I'm literally naming good guns, but they're literally the worst guns in the game. The Shiva, they're really powerful in some situations, but they're still considered, in my opinion, the worst in the game. And you really aren't many bad guns. In my opinion, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't even think it's a bad thing either, because sometimes I do like there being bad guns because it makes it more fun, because you can actually try to use bad guns and try to do good with them. Sometimes it's enjoyable, but that does mean it is very, very balanced. The whole created class system is very balanced. I find myself not using the same perks or attachments or equipment ever. I'm always using different stuff, which is great. Specialists are actually pretty cool in this game. I think they're kind of annoying because in terms of the way that they kind of act as free score streaks, and that's kind of unfair in some ways. It's like you don't really deserve to get, you know, a war machine because you didn't do anything. You just sat there and stood there and did nothing. But I do like how they have backstories to them and stuff like that. I thought they were interesting. They look cool. They're fun to customize. Customization in this game is great. It's very fast paced. That's also a good thing. Then we get into some of the bad stuff. The supply drops. The supply drops is the worst part of Black Ops 3. The supply drop system overall, it was just unfair. It wasn't balanced. It literally made you can spend $1,000 on supply drops and not get a gun that you want, but somebody can literally spend $0 and just open a supply drop just because they felt like, you know, they had 30 crypto keys, and they can get a gun that you tried to get, they didn't even want, but you tried to get, and you spent $1,000 to try to get it. I mean, it's your fault for spending $1,000, but still, it's not fair. That's not fair at all. Obviously, other Call of Duties have made supply drops completely fair. They make it so you actually can get them. You know, you can't spend that much money without getting something. You will guaranteedly get it because you earned salvage, and you could just purchase the weapon with salvage, which is great. But this game didn't have that system. It just literally was, you get lucky and you get the gun. That's it. It was 100% based on luck, which is unfair in my opinion. The Brecci was a little overpowered in some situations, but that's really it. That's honestly the only complaints I have about the multiplayer. The supply drops and the Brecci. Like, I really don't have any other complaints. They've had tons of good maps. The maps are amazing in this game. They have really good maps. Actually, that's one thing I forgot to mention. The maps are good. I'll put it at that. But there's no unique maps. There's no unique, different maps like what Advanced Warfare and Ghost had, which I've been talking about. I like dynamic maps that have map-based events, map-based streaks, map-based whatever. Not one map in this game really had that. You know, not too many of them. But there were some good maps. There were really competitive and fun maps like Combine, Hunted, Stronghold, some really good, solid maps. They also remade some really good maps like Raid and Hijacked and stuff like that. So that was great. No, let's go move on to the zombies. The zombies in this game is pretty freaking amazing. We have the most amount of maps. So replayability-wise, we have 14 maps in this game in total, obviously including Zombies Chronicles. 14 maps. That's the most out of any Call of Duty ever. Most maps, other Call of Duties had like 5 to 8 maybe at most. This game has 14, so you won't get bored of this game in terms of that. Obviously, there's no fun game modes or anything like that. It's just the maps themselves. They do have a level up system in Zombies, which is nice. It also adds replayability to it. The Gobblegums, I'm not a big fan of. I'm going to be honest. I never was a fan of Gobblegums. It's my biggest issue with Black Ops 3. They kind of put you at a disadvantage if you don't have them, and they put you at an advantage if you do, and it kind of makes it not pay to win, but kind of unfair. People can complete Easter eggs easier, and it just makes the game too easy if you are using them. So, you know, I don't like Gobblegums. I don't like the system. I think it works in games like Infinite Warfare when you make it so there's nothing overpowered, like there's no perkaholics or shopping freeze or stuff like that. You shouldn't have those. I think the maps are all really good overall. Obviously, I have some issues with some of them in terms of There's not really much diversity between them. They never added new perks, which kind of sucks. Chronicles wasn't exactly what I expected. But you still look at the maps and you realize we have Shadows of Evil, Draha, Gorod Krovi, Origins. All those maps, which I consider some of the best maps in Call of Duty Zombies history, all on one game. So that is great. That is amazing. Zombies is great because of that. The story is amazing in this game. Incredible. Some awesome character development between the characters. I was very interested in it, I gotta be honest. The cutscenes are very, very beautiful and well done. The overall DLC season was just a good DLC season. Like, I was always looking forward to the next map very much, especially when they brought back the PPSH in DLC 3. That was the most hype. But I think that just Black Ops 3 overall is just a very solid game. There isn't much problems I have with it other than campaign, supply drops, gobblegums, and not really making maps diverse in multiplayer and zombies. So that's kind of the only complaints I have. Everything else is great. But let's move on to the #1 Call of Duty of all time, which I'm really excited to announce, and that is Call of Duty Black Ops 2. So Call of Duty Black Ops 2, my favorite Call of Duty of all time, and a lot of others as well. I'm not the only one who feels this way. It's kind of like, I wouldn't say the whole community, but a good percentage of the community feels this way about this Call of Duty. Let's start off with the campaign. I want to get this as quickly as possible because honestly, there's a lot to say about this Call of Duty, but I just don't want to go that far into detail. I just want to make it a lot quicker, so I'm not making this video any longer than it already is. But campaign, it followed BO1 pretty damn well. I think they made it into the future, which was good. I thought there was a first futuristic Call of Duty, which I was okay with at the time. I didn't mind the future. Obviously, we got a little too much of it as time went on, but for this time, it was actually pretty new. It was refreshing. It did follow BO1 pretty well by continuing the storyline from Black Ops 1 and also continuing David Mason's son's story, or Alex Mason's son, who was David Mason's story, which I like that a lot. Menendez, one of the scariest villains and one of the most well-written, well-developed characters we've ever had in the entirety of the Call of Duty universe. Decisions that you were able to make that changed the endings, I love that a lot. It made each playthrough different because campaign, I feel like you can't play multiple times. You kind of get bored after you play it once or twice. But this allowed me to actually play it again and again and again because there were so many different choices that I could make. That made it one of my favorites. Story-wise, it wasn't my favorite, but like replayability and overall enjoyment of each mission, one of my favorites for that reason. It's just a good campaign, I gotta say. It's really entertaining to watch other people react to it. It's really entertaining to play it myself and just watch the missions over and over again because they have some really awesome stuff within this campaign. Next, let's talk about multiplayer. Easily the most enjoyable multiplayer of all time, the most competitive, the most fun to have, the most fun to pub stomp, the best streaks of all time in my opinion. They're fun and they're also good at the same time. They are really powerful. The Swarm, which is happily coming back in the Black Ops 4. Thank God Black Ops 4 feels so much like Black Ops 2. That makes me so happy. It just has the best balance. This game is so goddamn balanced. Everything about it. The creative class system, the guns, there's just such good balance between everything. It just makes it such a well-rounded Call of Duty that I don't feel like I'm getting bullshit on that much. But that does bring me into the negatives, which I have 2 negatives. That's it. Only 2 negatives about this entirety of this multiplayer, and that is that sniper rifles are a little too powerful in some situations, and the C4s are obnoxious as hell, as well as the claymores can be kind of obnoxious, but there are ways to counter them, so that is a fair reasoning. They're just really obnoxious, the C4s in this game. I absolutely hate getting killed by them, but everything else is just so great. The maps, absolutely amazing. It was a really well-rounded multiplayer to succeed after Black Ops 1, of course. We had obviously party games coming back, which was great. The ranked play was a really well done system, which was new for anything. The league play, my bad, not ranked play. And it was really fun to play competitively, which was kind of new for Black Ops 2. We didn't really see competitive Call of Duty that much beforehand, but this is when competitive COD started becoming actually a thing. And I even started doing tournaments myself around this time. I obviously don't do them anymore, but when I did do them, they were really fun, and I actually won a few of them. Tons of fun I had. And then I started doing it more in Call of Duty Ghosts as well. But overall, it's just a well-rounded multiplayer that I can literally play any day of my life. And it's really sad that the multiplayer now is almost unplayable because of modders and hackers. It really sucks that that has to exist. It does kind of ruin the experience, but that is what it is. And let's get to the zombies, the final thing that I want to talk about. And I don't know if I like Black Ops 3 or Black Ops 2 zombies better. I don't know, honestly. I think Black Ops 2 as a whole is better, but in terms of the maps, Black Ops 3 is better. Because if you think about it, Black Ops 2 only really has 3 good maps. You have Mob of the Dead, Buried, and Origins, which Mob of the Dead and Origins are my 2 favorite maps of all time, which is amazing. But I feel like what you get in Black Ops 2 as an overall experience is better than Black Ops 3 because you have such diversity between the maps. So you have the Jimmy Zielinski maps, which include Transit, Die Rise, and Buried. You have, easier ones like Buried. You have harder ones like Origins and stuff like that. You have obviously the Jason Blundell maps, which would be Mob of the Dead and Origins. So they split up pretty well. So if you want to play a Jimmy Zielinski style map, you can play a Jimmy Zielinski style map. If you want to play a Jason Blundell style map, you can play that. Also, if you want to play survival and just play on fun survival maps, you don't want to deal with Easter eggs, you can do that. You can play the different survival maps within Transit. They have 3 different survival maps, and then you have Nuketown as well, which is also a survival map. If you want to play different game modes, there's 2 different game modes they had. They weren't the best game modes that they've ever had that they could possibly have done. I think the Rush mode is going to be a lot more exciting, but it's still an interesting idea that they added in game modes, including Grief and Turned, and different maps that you can play it on. Overall, I think it was just a better experience because of that. I think it has the 2 best maps of all time, so that also kind of gives it a plus. Even though it does have probably the worst map, which is the Transit, of course, it still has the 2 best, and I think that outweighs having 1 bad. So yeah, and the perks, don't forget about the perks. They have such a diversity of perks in this game. You have the addition of Tombstone, Who's Who, Electric Cherry, and Vulture Aid. The only one that they've kind of even really cared about in Black Ops 3 was Electric Cherry, but I think Vulture Aid deserves some love. I think they should definitely bring it back in some way, shape, or form. Tombstone, Who's Who kind of got a back burner because they sucked, let's be real here, but at least they added new perks rather than Black Ops 3 only adding 1 in the entirety of the lifespan of the game. So yes, that is it. That is my ranking of all 11 Call of Duty games after, of course, Call of Duty 3, so this is including starting with Modern Warfare all the way up to Call of Duty World War II. I'm really excited for Black Ops 4. I really hope it takes the #1 spot. It might not. I don't know. Depends how the DLC season goes. But so far, based off of the Blackout beta, based off of the multiplayer beta, I think it's got at least a #1 or 2 spot secured easily, which is really exciting. I can't wait for Black Ops 4. I'm definitely going to be doing this list again, ranking in the top 11 Call of Duties of all time next year. So expect that next September, maybe about a year from now, I would assume. So be ready for that, but my opinion could change. And if you want to check out my other rankings of older Call of Duty games, check those out, because I made one a few years back ranking the top 8, which was up to Advanced Warfare, and then I did one last year which was ranking the top 10, which was up to Infinite Warfare. And so obviously my opinions have changed drastically, not just with the new Call of Duties having a different influence and finding a space for the new Call of Duties, but also for the older Call of Duties, my opinions change on those, and they kind of fluctuate severely. So if you want to see what my opinions were a year ago or 3 years ago, check those videos out. There's probably a playlist somewhere where I talk about it. I think you could probably just find it in the playlist. I think I called a playlist called Ranking of Call of Duties or something like that, and you can find it there. Obviously, I'm going to add this to that playlist. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.